Who was the 46th American president? The records will show that Joe Biden was the 46th president. Years ago, I read an excellent book, American Caesars, by Nigel Hamilton. It's fair to say that American presidents have been an interesting bunch. Some of the greatest leaders, and by pure virtue of the power, influence, and might of America, the president leads the free world and bestrides that world like a colossus. Look at Trump at the reopening of Notre Dame. The magnetism of the person and the role draws people in. The great and the good of the world are transfixed by his charisma. And some of that charisma is a robe from the presidency. The president is often not quite the person he's made out to be. JFK's marriage was a mainly political affair, and his affair started long before they married. I went to Lyndon B. Johnson's presidential library, and his achievements are truly impressive. Nixon said nothing when he lost the election to voter fraud. George Bush Jr., I'm really not convinced he was the hokey hillbilly he sometimes role-played. A friend once said to me, "There's a portion of American voters who want to vote for someone that they'd share a beer on their front porch with, and coming across as a bit of an uneducated shoot from the hip, Bush delivered that." Well, the Biden presidency is an enigma to me. When he was running against President Trump, he was accused of having dementia, and I thought that's a bit much. Probably a lot of voters did. But the signs were there from the start of his presidency, although most media chose not to cover or ran cover for these signs. The slips on airplanes, the rambling speeches, the claims that he used to ride a train with a member of staff who, was he dead or not working yet, but couldn't possibly have been on the train. The claims he marched in the civil rights marches. He did no such thing. The claims he drove an 18-wheeler lorry. It turned out he spent a couple of days sitting in the cab when he was campaigning. The cannibalism claims about his relative who crashed far out at sea. The nastiness in his voice when he spoke to the BBC and spat out "I'm Irish" as a reply to "Hello, we're from the BBC." One of my aunts had dementia. She loved repeating rambling stories, fantasies as her son was an agent at MI6. A family friend died of dementia, and he would snap for no reason as he desperately grasped to hold the moment. And that's what I saw in Joe in those early years. There were other signs. Trump would give 3-hour press conferences unscripted. Remember when they killed Baghdadi and he gave a 45-minute rambling off the top of his head speech about him? He died like a dog. Well, the speech was a bit crazy, but Joe rarely spoke. And when he did, he would call specifically named journalists with pre-prepared questions. He would ramble. He'd make ridiculous claims. He'd salute the air, shake hands with shadows, walk off stage left in the wrong direction, have to be helped to find the way into the White House. What really bugged me was he would say, "I have been told to call on X journalist from X media service." The president shouldn't be told who to take questions from. But when Obama visited the White House, and Joe was like a giddy schoolboy. It's not age. I know several people in my late 80s who are mentally cogent, in full command of their faculties. I'm not sure I'd expect them to be mentally clear after a full day of talking and decisions, or that I'd want them to hold the nuclear football. But they're clear, and they do speak coherently. These were not the behaviours of a man running the White House. Being president, you have a lot of advisors and thousands of staff, but you do have to make decisions, work long hours, and be clear and coherent. The signs were there that he wasn't in control. By the time he finally agreed to a debate and designed the debate around his abilities, he failed miserably, and in the spotlight, the world saw what had been hidden from them. Now, people online had seen memes and cuts of his speech and criticism, but the mainstream media hadn't covered it, and the likes of Nancy Pelosi and Kamala Harris were always there to say how impressed they were with his magnificent brain when they spoke. I'd already started to think, who's actually calling the shots? Who's running the White House day to day? The media wasn't interested to discuss this, and it's still not interested. But I think it's fair to say that at least at some points he wasn't making the decisions. Now, Britain had the same with George III. He'd be perfectly in control and then he'd be talking to a tree. He suffered from mental illness and he'd have episodes where he wasn't in command. Well, we now have historians to tell us that, and it's common knowledge. There's even a film. But with Joe, there's a pretense that he really was the president. He just didn't turn up to any press conferences and took a lot of holidays. But I'd like to ask, who are the candidates? Who actually ran America for the last 4 years, at least some of the time? So here's a few. Obama. Can't be president 3 times, get yourself a seat warmer. This doesn't really seem to hold water. Obama supported Hillary against Joe, and whatever you think of Hillary Clinton, she is not a seat warmer. Now, his policy worked for Putin, but I don't buy it with Obama. Nancy Pelosi. Well, I don't doubt that she has influence, power, and guile it takes to be a president, but there doesn't seem to be much love lost between her and Joe after his presidential campaign collapsed. And apart from her investment advice, she doesn't seem to be quite the president. Dr. Jill, the First Lady, seemed keen to post on social media that she was preparing for diplomatic meetings, posing, signing documents at the Resolute desk, and posing for Vogue as though she was president, but she wasn't elected as president. Was she? I don't think so. Hunter? The unexplained connections and wealth. He's clearly a smart cookie in between doses of crack. And he is in the White House a lot, but as Joe has said, they aren't involved in each other's business affairs. Karine Jean-Pierre. Well, in a functional White House, the press secretary would be a capable operator. Think of CJ in the West Wing. But Karine Jean-Pierre, she's a diversity hire, a friefer, as she pointed out in her first briefing. She certainly can be good with words, but does anyone really think she was making decisions? I don't buy it. Kamala Harris. Well, we should mention the VP. In most presidencies, the VP is the replacement, the heir apparent. Perhaps that explains her complete absence from public for most of the 4 years. It's not that she wasn't doing anything, it's that she was doing everything. I don't buy it again. Could it be a shadowy figure? The administration always has people who we never know who do much of the decision making. But then we'll never know. Could be a group of decision makers. A cabal is what you'd call it if you didn't approve. The problem is they would be the paymasters. And have we seen any companies or organisations benefit ridiculously from decisions? So who was it? Who decided the lives of millions for 4 years? Will we ever know? My guess is that their photo may appear in the presidential library when one's built, but that the official story will be that Joe made all the decisions and was full-time president, but that some group of people helped him, took the load, steered the direction, maybe made the decisions, maybe just made the suggestions that helped make the decisions. I do hope one day we'll find out a more candid truth.